There are many descriptions of journeying to the underworld or the other side or heaven. So many, in fact, that they stretch back as far as the origins of human writing and stretch back even further with oral tradition. Beginning with the Epic of Gilgamesh, right through to Jesus going into Sheol and also describing heaven. The afterlife has been part of the human conversation, religion, and literature forever. But what really comes next? And how does that compare to what people believe? Are there similarities? Is it possibly a case of what you believe you're going to get is what you're going to get? It's possible. Welcome to the Occult and the Apocalypse with Kristen, aka Fire Terror Mama, where I tell you how they took what was once widely known about God, spirituality, and you and locked it away. Come with me while I show you what I've learned from science, religion, cultural beliefs, and mythology to turn the occult and the apocalypse into just the hidden and the revealed. Now, in a recent study, 15% of patients in intensive care had experienced a near-death experience, or NDE. A quote from a woman in Connecticut who had an NDE said, "There is no question in my mind that I went to the other side and merged with and had a conversation with the creator of all that is. I returned with a fraction of that unconditional love which has never left me." This woman named Leandra had her near-death experience somewhere around 2010 after becoming septic with a double kidney infection. She says that she was floating above her body and felt like she was everywhere and nowhere all at once. Per her report, she felt a presence that, as she got closer to it, she said she felt immediate bliss or immense bliss. She struggled to put this into words, but she said essentially that she felt wrapped up by it and it hugging her yet through her all at once. Now, another person, a retired Army vet named Tommy, was in multi-organ sepsis and on a ventilator for 7 days. He goes on to say, "It was a transformational presence of peace, comfort, serenity, love, and home," he says. "I was no longer confused. I was no longer alone." Now, reoccurring themes within near-death experiences include bright light, entering a tunnel, going through a life review, and also a sense of peace and relief. Now, often from a neuroscience perspective, this is the brain firing off its last sparks of life. So, therefore, it couldn't possibly be real, right? Just tricks from a dying brain. Except there are people who have reported the same feeling in states of deep meditation, particularly for those trying to achieve a particular goal of meditation, reaching the Akashic space, sometimes known as the ether. Now, this is like a specific meditation destination that's often referred to as the Akashic Records or the Akashic Library. It's purported to be a space where all that ever was and ever will be, all that is, was, and ever will be, is all documented. Want to know more about who you are and why you're here? Check out your soul book. Want to know why you feel intimately tied to a person or a place or a thing? Check out your soul contract. Do you want to access a past life or a future lesson you hope to learn for your soul? You guessed it, the Akashic Library is the keeper of all of these things. But the Akashics is much more than just a record hall. It's supposed to be the place where all things come to pass, our soul's home. In the Akashic space, just beyond the library, there are rooms that are just your own space, almost like Jesus's many mansions. And there are also shared spaces where you and other souls like yours can hold audience with ascended masters and just about every type of god, demigod, supernatural, or divine being, or other soul that you can think of. And although there are soul groups and soul friends, there's a general sense of connectivity and oneness with all things. You can gain enlightenment in most even, of the questions about yourself, the universe, and the divine while you're there. And how do I know this? Well, I've been there. It's actually quite easy to do. Now, believers in this space also tend to believe that this is the origin point of most dreams, our oversoul or higher self, as well as clair gifts such as intuition, foresight, prophecy, clairaudience, and the like, filtered down to a three-dimensional vessel that we inhabit. In the Akashics, these gifts are all part of just your normal senses. You can feel the feelings of the souls around you, speak telepathically with others, and commune with the divine. It's also described similarly to how the afterlife is described in religious texts all across the world. Shining walkways, peaceful fields, life review centers, places to gather with loved ones gone before you. And the ever-present sense that God is not just with you, but all around and through you as well. So what does this have to do with the afterlife and near-death experiences? The reason lies with the prefrontal cortex, among other areas of the brain. According to several studies done, one dealing with people who are actively dying and others measuring the brain during meditation, there are a lot of crossover between the two. According to the study done on those that were actively dying, there are similar things happening in the brain between that and what is happening in the brain during types of meditation. So this brain mapping on death and meditation, especially ones involving astral projections and reaching higher dimensions, maps similar ways. There is a measurable increase or even a flurry of activity within several areas of the brain, and specifically involving gamma brainwaves. So, without further studies to draw on, we can hypothesize that brain activities at those at the point of death or dying have similar brain activity to those in deep states of meditation, which is necessary to achieving entry into the Akashic field. The Akashic field is an energy field. However, because everything is energy, it can be experienced as a physical place to the energetic soul as it resonates at that same vibration. Now, Tesla referred to this as the aether. However, its roots go much further back. So to understand where we are going, we have to understand where we have been. Ether was also known in the ancient world as Akasha, and it's a Sanskrit word derived from the root meaning of to be. In Hinduism, it is the basis and essence of all things in the material world. It's the fifth element, and the main characteristic is sound. It is one eternal and all-pervading physical substance. It is also translated to aether and is one of the 1,000 names of Shiva. Now, in Jainism, it is one of the six dravas, or substances that accommodates the other five, which are sentient beings or souls, non sentient substance or matter, the principle of motion, the principle of rest, and the principle of time. It's divided into two parts: Lokosa, which is occupied by the material world, and Alakosa, which is the space beyond, which is void and empty. The Lokasa, or physical portion, is only formed by a portion of the universe, and it forms only a part of the Lokosha. Now, at the summit, or the very top, is the Siddhashula, or abode of the liberated souls. That kind of sounds like heaven to me. Now, equally congruent with the concept of death and meditation being able to achieve the same destination, in Buddhism, Akasha is recognized as essentially, in the same way as Hinduism, the material that makes everything seen and physical. However, in relation to meditation within Buddhism, Akasha is significant in the context of the sphere of infinite space, the first of four immaterial absorptions called drahanas. A drahana is considered a concentration or a single point absorption where there's a diminished awareness of one's physical surroundings. Essentially, a separation of the consciousness from the body. Basically, it's considered achievable state of meditation, although it's also considered the source of physical matter and all of the space in between. So it's a vibration that you can reach in meditation. Now, Jesus tells us a few things about heaven. He tells you that the kingdom of heaven is upon you. It's in you, it is around you, and it exists for your access. It is for those with the eyes to see and the ears to hear. He calls those not enlightened to it the dead, and he often asks his disciples if they are still sleeping, which we often say that you awaken when you go through an enlightenment. So if you are not yet enlightened, you would still be sleeping, or essentially disregarding the truth. He also tells us that he's going to go to the Father and essentially prepare a space for us. He tells us there are many mansions there. He's also found in meditation more than once in his time in the Bible. Now, in early meditation access classes around the Akashic space, there can be guidance to a room that is essentially your Akashic room. This often reflects your current state of being, attitude, and mindset. It's like little soul houses. But outside of that room is essentially everything that ever is, was, or will be. If you're interested in learning more about the Akashics, look up Terry Uktana. I think it's called the Akashic Records, or it could be called the Akashic Library, but she does a great job at explaining it. I would suggest starting at number 1 and listening to it through, because she really builds on what she has to say, and she does great descriptions and real, true answers to questions that you can, if wanting to put in the work, kind of confirm for yourself. Now, even in a state of meditation where you say, imagine yourself in a field of flowers, where it becomes so realistic that you see and feel and smell and experience this. Now, neuroscientists might consider this a trick of the brain, but from a spiritual perspective, this is the consciousness essentially accessing the Akashic field. So, since some belief systems do link Akashic energy to a place where liberated souls exist, and in taking the term liberated souls to mean free from being bound to the worldly 3D existence or vessel, either through meditation or perhaps through death, one starts to wonder how this contributes to the cultural views of the afterlife. Now, near death experiences are not a new thing. In fact, they're thought to have created the basis of what and how people, religions, and cultures formulated their thoughts about the afterlife. The themes are truly the same over and over: a sense of a void, potentially a tunnel, a bright place, the sense of meeting past loved ones and some beings of divine nature, some type of review of one's wrongs in the world. Occasionally, a view of others being punished, which I'll talk more about a little later. And often the experience ends with some wise words on how to walk a better path here on earth before being sent back, okay? That's the typical theme for near death experiences, and they've been reported throughout written history. Now, for some cultures, that dark void is a bridge to cross, or a tunnel to go through, or a river to travel down, but the primary components are similar. Some cultures break the afterlife into sections. In Norse mythology, an individual could go to one of several afterlives. For an elite warrior killed in battle, it was Valhalla for you. For other warriors who died in battle and women of noble deaths, you would go to Folkjanes, which means field of hosts, or field of armies, or fields of the people, which I find interesting because one of Yahweh's titles in the Bible calls him the Lord of Hosts, which also translates to armies or people. But I digress. Hell, with one L, is the afterlife for most people. There is a special place within it called Nostrand for those who are oath breakers, murderers, or adulterers. But for the rest of hell, it's essentially just a space of afterlife for normal, everyday death. There are still yet several other places, including the land, the Fells, Ran Hall for those drowned at sea, Grimly, which is the Golden Hall, attested to be where mankind lives after Ragnarok, for those who were virtuous in life, and so on. Sounds a little familiar. In many religions that believe in reincarnation, such as Hinduism or Buddhism, the realm of the dead is temporarily stopped before going back into the rebirth cycle until you are karmically liberated from having to rebirth. This is not unlike the belief in the Akashic space for modern day spiritualists who see this as really where souls originate from, and the soul stays there until they choose to incarnate in another life. Now, in Judaism, there's a range of beliefs. In the Bible, there's Sheol, and that's known in rabbinic tradition as school on high, which I particularly enjoy because it does encapsulate one of the essences of the Akashic space. It's supposed to be a soul school. They also believe that any people or faith has a place within it, and they do not have the concept of hell. Aside from those who renounce God and are cut off from kin, everyone goes there. There is some belief that eventually there will be a bodily resurrection, while others believe that we live on through our descendants. Now, in ancient Sumer, heaven was the abode of the gods and the gods alone. It was wonderful, amazing, and you couldn't go there. Instead, you went to Kur. That was the deep underground and was a dark, dreary cavern where you essentially kept a transpositional version of living your life. You worked a job, you ate and slept. However, your only food and drink was that of dry dust. In fact, it was in Sumer where the concept of pouring liquid or libation onto the ground to share it or commemorate a lost loved one or lost friend originates. Depending on what part of the world it was done in after that, it could be water, oil, ghee, honey, or alcohol. And I'm sure you all know it's still very much done today. There was neither punishment nor reward for deeds on earth, and no sense of judgment. This was also the dwelling place of demons. Now, in ancient Egypt, there were 3 afterlife ideologies. Now, Duat could only be reached by traveling through the tomb of the deceased. There may have been a path for royalty and a separate one for people, common people, but on the way there were various gods or representative of gods who put people through multiple tests or recitations of prayer. They determined the virtue of the soul and granted a peaceful afterlife to the deserving. In Egypt, eternal life was thought to be through rebirth, and through Osiris they were born again, sort of. To achieve the perfect afterlife, many rituals had to be done in life, and the hope was to, in the afterlife, do their same jobs and enjoy their same hobbies. They believed that there would be fertile soil to till and riverways to boat down. And whatever you had drawn on your tomb is what you would have with you in the afterlife. Such as the boat that you would need to travel to the different waterways to get to the different places. Now, during judgment, if your heart was weighed less than a feather, Osiris let you get into Sekhet Agru. And if not, if it was heavier, Amet, the goddess, would permanently destroy your soul. There were fiery lakes and rivers along the way to get to these tests. And if you did not properly recite the recitations, you would be lost in a lake of fire, which is interesting. 2222, because there are lakes of fire in the Bible as well. Now, this would be before Anubis could even measure your heart, long before getting into the Hall of Ma'at for judgment. Now, the sense of rebirth occurred after judgment. Souls went to the mother goddess's womb, where they were united with their bodily parts. Immortality was reflected in endless lives. By doing worthy deeds in your current life, you would be granted a second eternal life. All souls granted this second life lived in the paradise Sekhet Agru, a beautiful field with rivers, and housed the gods and common people together, allowing these souls to live the lavish life of the gods. Now, in many indigenous cultures, many tribes across the world believe that there is a spirit either underground or in the sky, where it's a place that you go, a spirit world that you go. You can see your ancestors. And still other tribes believe in reincarnation of the soul. Now, ancient esoteric and modern spiritualists alike often believe that the spirit world is like a separate dimension from where we come from and where our souls go. This is what is often, but not always, referred to as the Akashic space. It's considered a space where souls, as I've said before, review their lives, reunite with their soul tribe, engage in new lessons, plan out next life goals, study amongst divine beings, and act as guides for those still living. Reincarnation is a choice and not necessarily a requirement. There's no set time that a person is expected to return to a new life, and all incarnations here and in any other place that life exists in the universe is voluntary. Most souls choose continued or intermittent reincarnation not as punishment, but almost as if playing the biggest game of pretend, combined with forgetting that it's only pretend, in order to create new experiences which are then absorbed as information by the ultimate creator of all. It's an opportunity through the soul as an extension of itself to explore what existence would look, sound, feel, smell, or taste like. Now, it's believed that amongst the spiritual community, or some of them, that more people are realizing or remembering that this place, this life, isn't necessarily the real one. Currently, in this time and space, it seems more people are becoming aware of different things and wondering things they may not have wondered before. Now, it's believed that this is happening because, based in divine love and knowledge and positive intentions, we are now what is being referred to as waking up, the apocalypse, revelation, in order to build a new world for future iterations of our own soul's journeys. Now, because your energy is power, and because if you do not wake up, you will not take back your power, and therefore your power is on loan to people who are aware that this is how the universe operates, and they use that power like currency to run things like massive rings across the world. Well, you are totally lost in the nitty gritty, minor, major conflicts that they themselves have set into motion. Now that we are in this waking up period, a lot of things that have been predicted to happen will likely begin to happen, theoretically, based off of belief systems, because in Revelation there's a set amount of things that must happen. However, really those things must happen because they create the fear monster that puts everybody back away from their power. And this is what many believe the apocalypse truly is. Now, there really is no eternal damnation in this space. However, based on shedding the vessel that we're in and how that kind of shields us from each other's energy in many ways, when we pass on and enter the Akashic space and experience oneness with everything, after undergoing life review, it can take a newly returned soul some time to work through those feelings of deep empathy, sympathy, regret, or even shame that exists from a higher perspective here on their actions on Earth. I believe that the images portrayed in ancient cultures of, or even people with near-death experiences or drug-induced divine experiences, and that's air quotes for a reason because you shouldn't have to force it. This may make them perceive a space of damnation as a visual representation, like a visual metaphor of the things that one may feel when faced with the implications of their own actions, as a warning system to correct themselves for when they are returned. Because often these people come back changed in their ways. Now, I never had a near-death experience, but I did have an experience where my soul, my consciousness, my essence, the thing that makes up me, be me, left or partially disconnected from my body. I don't have any recollection of where it was, but I know based on what has been told to me by the witnesses to this experience that it wasn't there, okay? So I remember none of the things except immediately before and just before I came into consciousness, I had a slight experience, okay? I think this was like a partial separation, and that's why it happened the way that it did for me. So I had a seizure. I remember it, that just before I was losing consciousness, just before the seizure began, what I could only describe as like psychedelic colored memories from my life began to flash in front of my face, in front of my eyes. And I remember having a deep understanding or knowing in that moment that I was dying. The rest of the story is as it's been told to me by the others around me. My physical body then regained consciousness and could even operate, moving and walking. Now, science, you fell a little there. Now, science will tell you that I was in a post-ictal state. I was in a post-seizure state. So my brain was not recording, okay? And that's not untrue. That's a real thing. However, I have had many seizures since that time. None in a long time, but many in a time period after that. And I never experienced what I experienced in this time, okay? So I knew that I was dying. And then I apparently stood back up, began walking to my car. The person that I was at the park with my son, drove me back to my home. My father, who was at my home, called, I think, my mother, and then potentially 911. I'm not exactly sure how it went down. And somehow my mother got there before 911, so it probably called my mother first. And sometime after that, I had another seizure. And my mother came in right after that, and what she saw was I was not present. I was up. I was actually backed into a corner. I had a look of tremendous fear on my face. She felt like I was a scared animal, and she could tell you that the thing that makes me me, the thing that animates my existence, was gone. It was gone. When my consciousness returned, I very quickly could see myself curled up in the fetal position. Like I could see my back, I could see my own back, but that's all that I could see. And I was in the fetal position on a gurney, and I was just slightly behind myself. I couldn't see anything around me, just myself on a gurney in the fetal position from the back. And then I suddenly felt anchored into my body. Like suddenly I felt everything. I saw it, like I could feel everything. I could hear everything. Everything was, I was back. I heard my name being called, and became clear that my eyes were closed. So I fluttered my eyes open, and I saw that I was in a hospital, and I immediately was aware of the sense of being annoyed at being back, but not understanding what I had come back from because I had no connection. Then my son's face flashed in front of my eyes, and I kind of had a sense of like, I'm back because I'm a mother. And I was happy about that. And that's when I really opened my eyes and started to talk to the doctors. This was a multi-year experience of gaining control over a sudden seizure disorder, which we rapidly found out was caused by a blood vessel, which has essentially been a ticking time bomb in my brain since birth. Um, Discovering the existence of this shed a lot of light on why many medical and physical events had played out in the different ways that they had. And someday I'll tell those stories because although I never questioned if God existed, God had no problem proving it to me over and over and over again. So this was one of those moments. It not only saved my life, but without it happening the way that it did, I would have left my son without a mother, and my daughter never would have existed. Now, although I do wish I had a cool story about my soul's little hiatus from my body, I don't. I just know that I was gone, and then I was back, and now I feel as though my soul, or consciousness, maybe not soul, but consciousness, escaped itself to this higher space in order to, as a form of self-preservation, perhaps. However, who knows? I could be wrong. Now that I know what I know about the Akashics, it makes me believe that I was returned for a distinct purpose. So, what exactly exists in the afterlife? Well, I have to leave that for you to think about. I can't tell you what it is for you. I can just tell you what it is for others and what I believe. For myself, the kingdom of heaven is upon me and accessible to me at any time. And I encourage you to give it a try. Now, in the meantime, thank you for helping me bring the occult and the apocalypse into just the hidden and the revealed. Next week, we're going to discuss the patriarchs of Judaism: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Can we find them in history? I do think so, at least a couple of them. I'll see you next week, and until then, continue searching for the truth. As Jesus says, ask and ye shall find, and knock and the door shall be opened. I'll see you next week.